said earlier today that if the council overrides successfully, which appears likely to say the least, he wants to sit down with the council after the fact and try to convince you and the rest of the council to eliminate the level 1 stops from the reporting requirements. Is that something you would do, and is it even possible to amend the bill any further than that?
We are not looking to amend this legislation. We believe that level 1 encounters should be a part of the scope, and we have a standard, uniform process to report this, and that there be no underreporting of the stops at all. But we do look forward to working with the administration on implementation, and we've got time to do that. Hi, Liz.
So the mayor has spoken about the disagreement over these bills by saying that the council doesn't understand what it's doing, and that that this is a misunderstanding between these two branches of government. Is that how you would describe it? Do you think the mayor is also misunderstanding, or would you say this is actually a strong philosophical disagreement between the council and the mayor on these two criminal justice issues?
Thank you, Liz, for the question. Well, first of all, I reject any suggestion that we lack the understanding of the day-to-day work that we do. So I reject that notion completely. If there is any misunderstanding there at all, I believe that everyone should take responsibility for their own misunderstanding. I believe that my members understand what they're here to do. They were elected to do that, and they represent their districts very well in that particular implementation of what they do day to day. So I don't agree with the suggestion that we don't understand what we do.
Is this a philosophical disagreement then?
Well, it probably is. And to that point, I would say that we didn't have to get here. We had a lot of time to talk about this legislation. And the public advocate can tell you that. He's been around a lot longer than I have. When it comes to actually both of these bills, they have been in talks for a long time. So we really didn't have to get to this, to this point at all. In my humble opinion, all of the questions should have been handled way before we ever voted on the legislation. And there should have been a complete understanding of what we were doing going forward by the administration. Thank you.
So this weekend, as you know, the mayor invited city council leaders, elected officials on the red road with the police department in an attempt to try to sway their decision. Do you think that impacted anything at all? It changed the minds of any elected officials or the decision today?
Thank you for the question. I think that the invitation was a good invitation. And as you know, a lot of my members are, fairly new. They've been in for 2 years. So unlike myself and some others, I've been around a long time. So even as community board chair, we've had an opportunity to engage and partner and do great things with our precincts for a long time. A ride-along has been one of those in the past. So for my newer members, I think it was a great thing for them to do. For some of the members that have been around, because of what's been going on with the talks around the legislation, it was a good thing for them to do as well. So I absolutely appreciated the invitation thoroughly, and it looked from what I saw that all of the members thoroughly enjoyed, that's relative, but got a lot out of it from their own perspectives.
Do you think it impacted any decisions for today?
You going to come into hearing with us today? I'll let you answer that yourself when you watch the hearing. Thank you.
There's, I guess it was going to be 4 years ago now. You were the chair of the Public Safety Committee. There was a push to cut funding from the police department budget. And the people pushing to cut funding from the police department budget cited a litany of complaints, many of which have been sort of brought up again as part of this process. That effort failed. This effort looks to succeed. Can you talk a little bit about how and why you think the politics of policing on the city council have shifted over the last 4 years?
Well, the quote-unquote politics, the body has changed. We'll start there. In the council, different experiences as well. Over the years, we've experienced a lot in this city, and I spoke about it the other day when I spoke about the impact of the pandemic, which I believe had a lot to do with a lot of the politics that were going on in the past also. We've seen over the course of this administration, we have seen statistics rise where we didn't believe that after the stop and frisk laws were concerned that this would be happening, but they are. So we've had to refocus and take a look and readjust ourselves when it comes to the policies and the timing and all of that. The mere fact that percentages have gone up and 97% of people that are stopped are black and brown people, that's significant to this city. It's significant to a tremendous population in this city as well. So it's made us take a look at things in a different way because of the statistics and because of the circumstances and because of the council.
You just said the statistics have made you, I'm sorry.
You may.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we don't conflate things. So those are, in addition to what the speaker said, there's two different things that were being discussed at that time. That was one thing. This is something totally different, addressing a totally different issue. So I just want to make sure we don't try to conflate those two kinds of conversations. And to one of the previous questions, I want to make it clear, from what the mayor said about changing the bill, what we are saying is that we have always been willing to have a conversation about how to implement the bill we pass the most efficient way possible. We were unable to have that conversation because there was a refusal to have it. Every time we had the conversation, they would say, we just don't want to do level ones. That's not a compromise. That is a gutting of the bill. And so we have always said, we need this information. Let's figure out the best way to do it. And the misinformation about how to do it, telling people that an officer will have to stop what they're doing to fill out a form, is not a good faith effort to have a conversation. When everyone has made clear, that's the administration's decision. We have laid out a plethora of different ways that officers can do it, whatever is the best and easiest way for them that doesn't interfere with immediate work that they're doing. It is not a prevention of police work. It is actual police work that's in the patrol guide, and we took that framework.
No, I mean, I was trying to ask a question, and public advocate wanted to have a say, and that's absolutely correct, but I get a follow-up.
Can we come back to you so everyone can get a chance?
Madam Speaker, public advocate, just for either of you, what's going on here can come off as a healthy government that's working in a healthy way. Obviously, the veto, the council voting again on this, but there's also been, dueling information now going out, from public advocates, the council, the NYPD, and the mayor. For the layperson that views this, does this indicate, any issue that you'd like to, talk to the public about as far as the government working together, making sure that, the public's interest is in mind here?
Well, I'll start, and then the public advocate can certainly chime in. I think what the public is seeing is healthy conversation around differing opinions of a law. We have laid out this legislation as honestly as we can in its presentation. Our issue has been the proliferation of misinformation that has gone out kind of late in the process, after we've already passed the legislation. Now the conversations are coming up. Information has been distributed, but it's been incorrect information. And some people, too many people, have taken that as being the truth when it is not. And I've got to, in this room, salute Kelly Mena and New York One for really getting the story right, when so many have refused to tell the story the way that it really, really is, and what this bill does and what this bill does not do, what this bill says and what this bill does not say. The quote-unquote messaging around paperwork seems to have been the theme of the day. I have repeated, and a lot of you have heard me repeat this, the NYPD is the most technologically savvy police department on the planet. They have the best of the best on the job, the best of the best taking care of New Yorkers, the best of the best, partnering with the New York City Council and others. We have a digital dog that goes into buildings to protect the NYPD and civilians where there is perceived harm in a building. What we have asked for in this simple data reporting bill is for an upgrade to a smartphone that, for all intents and purposes, the force is already using. The public advocate gave a great example at my press conference earlier today and actually stood there as any police officer would and gave me, what was it, like a 2-minute question?
It was actually under 10 seconds.
Under 10 seconds, he asked me he put something, I'll let him do it because he did it so well. And I answered him by a simple yes or no. You appear to me to be ... to grab demographics within a couple of seconds. The resistance to this legislation is disturbing. The resistance to truth-telling of data, of who is being stopped in the city of New York, is disturbing to me. It should be disturbing to everybody. There should not be resistance to telling the truth about who's being stopped in the city. There should not be resistance to finding out the facts of who is being stopped and why. And the mere question that we are looking at so much resistance and misinformation should disturb everybody.
Do you trust the mayor to run the police department? It sounds like. Well, I feel like this is you said it's disturbing, Madam Speaker. You said the administration's behavior in response to this legislation is disturbing. You said you brought this legislation forward because you're concerned about the statistical, the increasing number of stops, the non-compliance with the federal monitor. Do you trust them in the management of the department?
I trust the mayor to do right by the people of the city of New York. The mayor, as everybody knows, is a former member of the police department. And I trust his heart to do the right thing. In addition to that, once we override this veto today, I trust that the mayor will come back to the table and talk to us in truth and understanding of what this bill really, really does and what this bill does not do.
I'm just going to give the example that I gave, which, as I just said, the Madam Speaker, appears to me to be a black woman between the ages of 20 and 65. It was a 911 call. It didn't rise to another level stop. That's it. Whatever time that took is how many seconds. And it'll probably be quicker once it's on a drop-down menu and you are clicking through. Now, what has been disingenuous is that, one, I have to ask that information. The mayor has said we have to get the information. We don't. The patrol guide already says for level 2s, you have to give the appearance. We have to give what it appears to you. That's where we took the language from, and that's why we applied to level 1s. The other, besides the paperwork, so many other things, the idea that if I am trying to find a serial knifer or someone is in trouble, that I have to stop and do it right there, is just ridiculously disingenuous. The real question should have happened not during the ride-along, which I think is a good idea, but it also assumes that council members didn't do research before, which they absolutely did, but how these things are tagged already when officers are finished their tour. And they're tagging many of these, and what we've simply said is, if that is the simplest way for them to do it and not interrupt what they're doing, let's add some drop-down menus. Let's have the conversation about what that looks like. And I'm hoping that is where the conversation will go now that the council is doing what's in the best interest of the public and overriding this veto. But I hope everybody witnessed the questions that are there. All of them can be done by drop-down. Writing something down would be an absolute exception, not the rule.
Hi, thanks for the shout out. My question is this a political message that you're sending to the mayor, in particular that the city council also has legislative power when it comes to putting in laws? There's already been the city thefts fight, and we threatened a lawsuit on that. It seems to be this struggle between who has the might in this kind of legislative, who makes the laws in New York City.
Thank you, Kelly. Look, this isn't about any kind of power struggle. We are legitimately co-equal partners and co-equal workers within this building on two different sides of City Hall, period. So there is no power struggle here. We know who we are confidently as the Council of the City of New York. We know the work that we have to do legislatively to ensure that New Yorkers are protected on every level legislatively. So there really is no power here, no power struggle here. We wish that we did not have to stand here in the presence of going upstairs to override a veto. I would not want to be in that position. I know that the mayor would not want to be faced with this either. Who would want that? So no, there's no power struggle here. We are just going to have to work harder at collaboration between both sides of co-equal branches in the City of New York.
Just to follow up, do you think that this is going to lead to not as well collaboration? I mean, it seems to be in the last couple of weeks that it's been getting more and more tense. I mean, have your conversations with the mayor been more difficult than usual?
No, no. And even, I caught a little bit of the mayor's press conference earlier, and, his stance, even in his press conference today, it was not contentious. We are not contentious towards the mayor, and as I keep on saying, we speak quite regularly. Matter of fact, over this issue, we've been speaking quite a lot, and the conversations have been cordial conversations, but we respect each other to know that he feels one way about this legislation, the council feels another way about this legislation, and that is why we're here today.
Morgan, and then Dana, and then Matthew. So police on Saturday said that they have to file paper forms because of discovery requirements. It's required within the Attorney General's office to have the paper form. Do you guys know a lot about this? Are you guys working with the state legislature to maybe make those changes? And Speaker Adams, I was just wondering, do you know how many questions are on the form that police have to fill out on one stops?
Do you want to answer that one? Sure. I'm going to let the public advocate answer the paperwork.
For my knowledge, that isn't correct. If they did, it may have to be more about arrests and summonses. Possibly 250s, but my guess is not even that much. Definitely not for the level 1s, level 2s. Whatever the DAs or whomever might need should already be built into the system so that it can just easily be grabbed, which is why we tried to use the metric that was already there. And so, again, as they're tagging videos, a drop-down menu already exists for some of these tags. We're literally asking for some additional drop-down menus, not forms that have to be printed out, not forms that have to be handwritten. And what was the second part of the question?
The second question actually
Oh, it's about,
on the form that police are
depending how you look at it, 5 or 6. Yeah, the 6 just one they're kind of combined. Like, what was the reason? I mean, they might as well say 25 if they're going to make up a number. I don't know what to say about that. It's in the legislation. They can add if they want to. I mean, I don't know. They've been doing things like. Tell them to say 30. I don't know what to say. I know what's in the legislation. It's 5, 6, depending if you count what initiated stop and what the stop was for. That kind of can be combined to one. So it's race, gender, age, what was the reason for the stop, and what initiated stop, and did it rise to another level of stop? And one of those questions they actually asked us to add in.
We've heard you received calls from some elected officials asking you to delay the veto override because they were concerned it would affect the special election in the 3rd congressional district. And feed the argument that Democrats are soft on crime. Was that a concern, and how did you respond?
Nobody asked me to delay response to this action today, so that's not accurate. Do you want to talk about the questions themselves that were added, NYPD?
I can't remember which one.
I don't remember the questions that the NYPD added.
Yeah, it had to do with what initiated the stop. It was either the reason or what initiated the stop they asked us to add. But they're kind of similar on the same thing, so it wasn't, in our opinion, that big of a deal.
Yeah, Matthew, next, and then Laura.
Madam Speaker, assuming the vote, the veto is overridden as expected,
The first part of your question is that we expect the department to comply with the law just like any citizen would comply with the law. The second part of your question having to do with solitary, in the legislation itself, we are asking that isolation not be an issue within the term solitary confinement. Any correction officer still has the ability to restrain a violent offender as they see fit to protect themselves or protect the detainee.
What is the offender's or detainee's incentive to, for want of a better term, behave if he or she knows that there's not going to be?
That they won't be in a hole?
So first, we want to just be clear that we're trying to deal with some of the remaining vestiges of solitary. And so there is some solitary usage that is not talked about, like what happened with Brandon Rodriguez. That's not something they would count, but it indeed was someone being locked in this case, I believe, a shower stall for over 24 hours. And then you have lock-ins, emergency lock-ins that we are learning are being used too often, right? So you have that. This is systemic that you want to try to address. We also are trying to change the use of isolation to change behavior because, one, it's not changing behavior, and two, it has long-lasting impact. And so what we've allowed for is 4 hours of isolation to help de-escalate. But we have allowed for a lot of separation to occur from general population to try to do exactly what you said. And so there are privileges that can be taken away from commissary to other things. Hopefully there'll be more of things that are working like caps and pace. There are smaller units that can be used. So there's a caps and pace. That is what is being used now pretty successfully for people who have severe mental illness. It's not enough. It's not enough people in those. We think we need to have more. So there is a variety of things that you can do to create this new housing unit. The Department of Corrections has created many housing units in the past. This just sets a framework for a new housing unit, and there's a lot of flexibility and leeway there. I also just want to remind folks that the DOC can ask the board to adjust any of these rules if they have special cases when someone is particularly a problem.
If I could just lastly follow up, the federal monitor appears to disagree with this particular bill. What's your response to those?
We're looking forward to have a conversation with the federal monitor. Every time we've reached out, and I believe it's similar for the council, they said that they can't engage because of the lawsuit. So it's been very difficult to have that back and forth conversation. I found it interesting that the administration will lift that up because there's been way more reports against what they're doing than this.
We're going to call on N.J. Burkett today. Veteran. Hi, Melissa Russo.
Hi, no, it's okay. Madam Speaker, Mayor Adams, as you may have seen today, was describing the level 1 stops as these very sort of quick, informal, casual types of encounters. For instance, these are his words, not mine. Officer Lee's looking for his mom who lost she has dementia, or helping someone find a lost dog, or after a robbery. Hey, did you guys see someone running around the corner here?
I saw it.
He says that even some of your members who are supporting this override have told him that they don't want police to be forced to record the demographics in these types of stops. Is that true? The other thing is that Mayor Adams says these aren't stops at all, they're just casual encounters. And so the question for you is, why is it important for the demographics? Why is it important for you that the demographics be documented in these types of casual encounters?
Well, we're not talking about casual encounters. We're talking about investigative encounters. So that therein lies a part of the problem in the way that we're expressing this legislation again. Investigative encounters only. A part of your question was what some of my members said or what the mayor said. In a court of law, Melissa, that'd be called hearsay and not acceptable. So I don't know about those conversations that were had between the mayor and the members. Why is this information important? Well, I think that's the basis for this legislation overall. And again, it comes back down to the 2013 decision, by the monitor, in that the exponential cases of stop and frisk that were, very prevalent. And now, over the past couple of years, we have seen substantially the population of who is stopped, be people of color. So we need to know what the stops are for. We need to know who they are plainly in the data. We need that data collected so that we can figure this all out.
But aren't the types of encounters that the mayor is describing level 1 encounters that are covered under the belt?
Some of them were level 0, quite frankly, according to the patrol guide.
So are there level 1 encounters that are casual enough that they do not have to be reported under the belt?
We're only talking about level 1s. So, and therein again lies the information piece and conflating level 0s with level 1s, 2s, and 3s. So I don't know, Jemani, do you want to take a little bit more of that?
Two things. One, I just want to add, in terms of we're going to go to hearsay, I have spoken to many people who were standing with the mayor who were upset about what they were told once I explained them what the bill was. I even had one who asked if they wanted to print a retraction. I said no, because I don't want to make this more difficult than it has to be. So the mayor's not the only one that can claim that. There are people he is talking to, misleading them about what the bill actually does. To your question, even in the example that the mayor used himself, there is tagging that has to go on anyway. And so what we're trying to figure out, and even try to have conversations with the administration, when that tagging is happening anyway, what is the easiest way to get this information? If that's not easier, there are several other ways that an officer can get this information. They keep presenting the most difficult and at times arcane ways to do this. And that is something that you have to ask them. So if they choose the most arcane way to do it, you need to ask the mayor and the police department why they did that. But we chose a framework that already exists. In whatever level 1 definition that the mayor uses, there is tagging of video that occurs right now.
My apologies to MJ, my nose waiting, and I just one last time. So will those types of encounters that the mayor characterized today, the casual ones, what will be required
So our
in your bill?
Our bill very specifically says we do not want general or casual encounters, stops, however you want to call them, to be what is used. We were very clear about that, and then defined what level 1 is. The mayor is now countering that some of those are level 1. If the mayor counters that some of those are level 1, without our bill, officers have to tag that video. So what we're saying is if the officers have to do that anyway, the 7 seconds that I just showed or whatever it was shouldn't be as big of a deal as he is saying. And so we've been pleading to have conversations about implementation. Taking level 1s out is not a part of any kind of legitimate negotiation. Talking about how we can implement this in a way that is easiest for everyone is the conversation that we are ready to have and have been actually for a while. I don't. She said she answered the question. I don't understand. I guess what is the question that's not being answered?
Oh, I'm sorry, no, I was just.
Okay. That's what. It is an investigatory. It is an investigatory by nature. You're trying to get some information for some reason or the other. It's not. It's not an address. It's not. Hey, how you doing? It's not even a officer going to a group of folks and saying, how's everything, anything I should know about. That is not attached to anything. So we were very clear about that in our bill. If the mayor wants to bring that up, then ask him if he's already tagging that, because if he's not tagging it, he's violating the patrol guide, and then why are you now violating the patrol guide? We have also gave examples of how we can use a form to get massive information at once so that you don't have to go on tagging a whole bunch of, using a whole bunch of forms. And so these are conversations that they wouldn't have in earnest. It sounds like finally, after a vote, large misinformation campaign with a lot of city resources and an override, we can finally have that conversation.
Just if you could clarify this, sharpen the pencil, clearest possible terms, what type of police encounter would not constitute a level 1 stop?
Basically, what some folks have been saying for the past couple of weeks have been non-level 1.
Hey, how you doing?
How are you doing? What are the directions to the store up the street? How do I get to the library? How's your neighborhood looking today? What are you having for lunch? Those types of questions have been a part of this conversation as a part of misinforming the public as to what this legislation is saying. So nothing that would be deemed as a part of an investigation.
A community affairs officer goes into the bodega every day. Community affairs officer goes into bodega every day, asks the bodega on how's everything going, how are you, anything I should know about. That is not it. If the bodega happened to be robbed and the officer comes in and starts asking questions, that could be, and probably likely is, a level 1 encounter, stop, however the mayor wants to call it. But what I think folks need to remember is the reason we're trying to get this data. What if this data shows that there is no problem? Isn't that a possibility as well? The reason that we need it is because we don't have all the information. We have a lot of anecdotal information, and we have the person who was in charge of the remedial process saying that there is a problem, and one of the things that we should do is get more information. When you have, and level 3s have been called level 2s and level 1s. Shouldn't we all want to get as much basic data as we can so we can all look at it and either say yes or no, and if yes, how best to move forward? It's difficult to do that if you don't have the information. If this was 10 years ago, 11 years ago, and we didn't have the data about the abuses and stop question first, we probably never would have been able to try and address that with a remedial process.
If I may add, I just would like everyone also to remember that the NYPD is under federal monitorship for unconstitutional, unlawful stops. Since 2013, this came directly from the judge that said there is so much discretion and confusion within the NYPD, potentially not out of malintent, but that there is a lot of discretion here, that the best way to begin to get at this so that we see the scale and scope of what is happening so we can make better decisions as a city is to get a uniform recording process here. Again, 5 to 6 questions, not narrative form, yes, no, based on observation. They're not asking for ID. In fact, I had a conversation with an officer yesterday who said, well, do I have to get their ID? No. And he said, oh, well, we're good. We don't have a problem. It's really important for us to be focused on, we need this data so that we can do our jobs and we can do a better jobs. This is a first step in tackling a very persistent, pernicious situation that has been transpiring across New York City. We should be asking different questions. We should be asking, how do we be a better city that ends racially biased policing? That's the question we should be focused on. Thank you.
This one is for you.
Ay, sí.
Your last question.
En español. Claro.
¿Por qué tú crees que esto es importante seguir hoy? Para que podamos conocer lo que va a pasar, pero ¿qué tú crees? ¿Qué tú crees que importa aquí? ¿Por qué es importante seguir adelante?
Bueno, esto es sumamente importante para nuestras comunidades que ha sido impactado por discriminación de las actividades de la policía, ¿no? Lo que estamos buscando aquí es data, es información de lo que está sucediendo en nuestras comunidades, que hemos visto que los contactos de la policía, 98% son comunidades negras, de colores, que incluye los latinos. Para nosotros es importante colectar esta información para después investigar lo que está sinceramente sucediendo.
Pero el alcalde dice que esto va, lo mismo que estaban diciendo en inglés, pero en español, el alcalde dice que esto va a tomar el trabajo de los policías y que en vez de estar patrullando van a estar escribiendo.
No. Lo que dice la legislación es, ellos cuando están en frente haciendo una investigación, ellos no tienen que parar. Ellos siguen adelante con su trabajo y después lo pueden hacer, después de su turno de trabajo lo pueden hacer, muchas veces las policías andan en dos. Si ellos se enfrentan a una persona, hay dos adultos ahí que pueden responder a cinco preguntas que son: yo te veo latina, 30, 40 años, este paro no sucedió nada, terminamos. Eso es lo que estamos preguntando aquí. Es una cosa muy sencilla y sinceramente me siento tan sorprendida porque esto ha sido una situación tan difícil. ¿Por qué están rechazando buscar información de datos? ¿Por qué? Tenemos que preguntarnos.
Y si esto se pasa hoy, ¿qué tan difícil va a ser implementar que esto se lleve a cabo? Sabemos nuestra comunidad latina y afroamericana es la más...
Bueno, como lo que dijo la presidenta del concejal, esperamos que el alcalde y la policía sigan la ley. Y esto va a ser la ley y que ellos lo sigan. Nosotros queremos que ellos busquen una manera fácil para implementar. Nosotros como concejal no podemos implementar, ¿no? Solo hacemos la política. Para nosotros es importante que ellos siguen la ley, siguen éticamente y hacen lo mejor para el pueblo de New York City, que incluye las comunidades más impactadas por la policía, que simplemente por mucho tiempo han sido, ¿cómo se dice? Muchas personas han sido perjudicadas por cómo ha sido el sistema. Y eso queremos empezar a cambiar. Gracias.
Thank you, everybody.